how's it going this morning? My name is Bill Pfeiffer. I'm the outreach coordinator for Montana Trout Unlimited. I'm only in one of the cameras here. There we go. So today I wanted to talk to you a little bit about what do trout see? How does a trout see things above the surface of the water, primarily? And most of the things I'm going to be talking about are from this really excellent book that my uncle got me when I was just a young lad. It's called In the Ring of the Rise. It's by a man by the name of Vincent Marinaro. He was really one of the foundational Spring Creek fishermen in Pennsylvania and the East Coast. So he was good buddies with Lefty Cray and Charlie Fox and a bunch of those other guys. So Vince wrote this really great book where he did a bunch of study as to what do trout actually see. So one of the things we want to talk about anytime we talk about what trout see is this idea of what's called refraction. And refraction is basically, you should be pretty familiar with it. If you take a glass of water and you put something behind that glass, the light is going to bend going through that water. Water has this ability to make light slightly bend, and what it does is it'll make something look like it's in one place, but it's actually in a different place. It's actually slightly shifted. Right? So let me show you how that works with trout. So just like any other animal, trout have basically a cone or a window of vision that they can see from. I got one of these guys. Do you have a dog maybe who's gotten injured before? You've seen these? So this is a really good way to think about it. If I use this as my cone of vision, you know, this is what I can see. Basically anything outside of that cone is something that I can't see, right? So for a trout, as Ladd told us in his video, a trout has his eyes mostly on the top of his head. So for a trout, that cone looks kind of like this. It goes up, right? So it can't see where its eyes aren't pointing. Okay, so in any case, what we have here is, I just made a little drawing of our little trout here. His name is Felix, and Felix is near the bottom of the river, behind this rock. He's waiting for flies to come down to him to eat in the current. And let's say, just for our first hypothetical, that this water is about 3 feet deep. Okay, and Felix is holding just about mid-depth behind this rock, waiting for these flies. So Felix has a cone of vision that goes straight out from his eyes that's at a 97-degree angle. That means that basically that cone goes upwards in that from a 97-degree angle up to the surface, okay? And so Felix really can't see anything that's too far outside of that cone. You can't see things that your eyes aren't looking at, right? You can't see things that are behind you because you don't have eyes on the back of your head. Well, for the same reason, Felix can only see inside this cone, okay? One of the interesting things about this is the deeper Felix is in the water, let's say instead of being 3 feet deep, this water was 10 feet deep, suddenly, because Felix is deeper in the water, that cone gets a lot bigger. So you might think of a time when you snuck up on a fish that was maybe eating just underneath the surface of the water, and you were kind of amazed at how close you could get to that fish. Well, the reason being is that when Felix is that close to the top of the water, his cone of vision is so much more reduced. So it's easier for you to stay outside of that cone, so even though you can see him, he might not be able to see you. However, if Felix is at the bottom of a 10-foot deep pool and you come clumsily stepping up, Felix is going to know you're there because his cone is really big. So that's the first principle that we're talking about here, is just that there's this cone of vision that fish can see through. But remember, at the beginning of this, we talked about refraction and the ability for light to get bent by the water. So you'll see here that I've got a little fly drawn in, okay? And this fly is just gently floating down through the current to Felix. And is he going to take it or not? What's he going to see? So the cool thing about light is when that cone goes through the surface of the water, it gets refracted. So Felix, even though he's restricted to that 97-degree cone, he can actually see around a corner because the light bends around that corner. It'll actually bend the light, just like when you're looking at something on the other side of a glass of water and it seems to be in a different position. So this works to Felix's advantage. He's actually got this little 15-degree window where the light, after it hits the surface of the water, bends 15 degrees into this little cone. So the first thing that Felix sees when this fly floats into his window is the top of the wings. That'll be the first thing he sees. So if you're using like a parachute mayfly pattern, for example, the first thing the trout's going to see, he might see some of basically a light pattern on the surface where that just a shapeless blob of where the fly is. But really what Felix is doing is he's seeing around a corner. So as this fly comes into his window, he's going to see the tops of the wings first, and then as the fly gets closer and closer, he's going to see more and more of the fly. However, it's going to get to a certain point where Felix isn't going to be able to see around that corner anymore. He's basically just going to be looking at the bottom of the fly. And that's a lot of times what happens with a trout. This fly will come in, you'll see the fish rise off the bottom, and then start to inspect the fly. And so what Felix will do is he'll see that image, and then once that fly gets really close to him, he's just basically hovering right up underneath it, looking at that shapeless blob. And that's usually when a trout decides, especially in slower water, it takes a lot longer time, whether or not to take the fly. Okay, so we've all seen this happen when a trout rises off the bottom, gets right up under the fly, and then follows it, seemingly with his nose right on the fly. So that's what's happening right there. Felix can no longer see around the corner. He can no longer see the top of the fly. He can just see that shapeless blob. So he's just trying to decide, is this food or isn't this food? So things that you can use from this when in your angling. Obviously, when a trout is deep in a hole, it has the biggest possible sight window, right? So when you're approaching a pool, even though it's really deep and you might think that that fish in the bottom of the pool has less ability to see you, the opposite might be true. And remember, when this 97-degree window hits here, it bends so that the fish can actually see more of what you think he can than he actually can because of refraction. So I hope this explains a few things about how trout see above the surface of the water for you. I hope you found it interesting. And this one I recorded on my GoPro as well, so I'm hoping to upload it to YouTube so that you can use it in the future. But once again, I really recommend checking out this book by Vincent Marinaro. I think you can still find it in print some places. It's one of several wonderful books that he wrote, and it's full of really great information and some awesome photography. And if you think, this is long before digital photography, so for Vincent to be able to get these wonderful images really took a lot of work and a lot of dedication. And it just goes to show how much we really owe all those who have come before us in fly fishing and angling and ecology, because they've shown us a lot about how things work that we use now and we kind of take for granted. So I hope you enjoyed this little lesson on what do trout see. Have a great rest of your week. We're going to try and do these on time at 11 a.m. So if you're trying to plan ahead to make sure that you see us and see what we're talking about, make sure you stop by here at 11 a.m. every day. And most days when I'm not too busy doing other stuff, I'm going to do one of these. So I hope you enjoyed it. Stay safe, stay healthy. We'll see you all real soon.